Imagine you're enjoying the warm Christmas atmosphere, twinkling lights, and laughter echoing everywhere. Suddenly, in a peaceful home in Middletown, Pennsylvania, gunshots ring out in the late night of December 24th, 2002. 3 lives gone forever. A devoted mother and her 2 young daughters, lying motionless in pools of blood. Next to her mother's body, 9-month-old Madison wails loudly, miraculously surviving the horrific nightmare. Who could commit such brutality, right on the most sacred family reunion night of the year? How long had the shadow of hatred been creeping into the family's heart? Welcome to the Case Files. Today, we uncover a nightmare that turned Christmas Eve into a scene from hell in quiet Middletown, Pennsylvania. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the infamous case of the Wholaver murders, where a father's rage exploded into unthinkable violence against his own family. We will trace every step, every whisper, to reveal the truth behind those deadly gunshots. Part 1. Background characters. Middletown, Pennsylvania, a small, peaceful town along the Susquehanna River, where everyone knows each other from childhood. John Wholaver, 43 years old, was the family pillar, working hard at Harrisburg Hospital as a reliable healthcare worker. She lived with her 2 daughters, Victoria, 20 years old, a young woman stepping into life with her newborn daughter Madison, and Elizabeth, 15 years old, a promising high school student. Their home on Ann Street was cozy, decked out with bright Christmas decorations, symbolizing hope amid the difficulties. But darkness had descended when Ernest R. Wholaver Jr., 42 years old, John's ex-husband, was forced to leave the house after a stormy divorce. Ernest not only lost ownership of the home, but also faced serious charges: sexually assaulting his own daughters, Victoria and Elizabeth. Dauphin County Court quickly issued a protection order under the Protection from Abuse Act, barring Ernest from contacting the family and strictly prohibiting him from possessing any firearms. Joan and her kids had legal protection, but fear still lingered, since Ernest was known for his violent temper and public threats. But then everything changed when Scott Wholaver, 28 years old, Ernest's younger brother, entered this dark picture. Scott lived with his brother at their parents' home in St. Benedict, over 110 miles northeast of Middletown, and was controlled by their complicated sibling relationship. The Wholaver family appeared normal on the outside, but inside it was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Have you ever wondered what tragedies small cracks in a marriage can lead to? Part 2. Unusual signs. A few months before Christmas, the atmosphere in Jean's home grew increasingly tense with strange calls from Ernest, despite the restraining order. Victoria and Elizabeth, the victims of the assault allegations, were preparing to testify at the upcoming trial, truly panicking Ernest. He frequently complained to his brother Scott about losing everything, and 2 months before the case, Ernest blurted out a threat: "I'm going to shoot Jean." Scott heard it but didn't report to police, probably because fear of his dominant brother controlled his mind from childhood. By December 23rd, Ernest began meticulous planning, convincing Scott to help under the pretext of picking up a puppy from the old house. On the morning of December 24th, Jean prepared for her hospital shift as usual, unaware that darkness was closing in. Co-workers noticed she was always punctual, down to the minute, so when John was absent without notice, they immediately worried. The phone rang endlessly with no answer. Messages piled up without reply, and silence enveloped the Ann Street home. Nearby residents recalled sleepless nights from vague arguments coming from Jean's house a few weeks earlier. But then, in the late Christmas afternoon, Jean's co-worker called Middletown police for a welfare check. Police knocked with no response, peering through the window to see unusual signs inside. Was this just Christmas forgetfulness, or the end for a broken family? Part 3. Incident. Crime scene. Early morning on December 24, 2002, the Wholaver brothers left their parents' home in St. Benedict, driving over 2 hours through snow-covered winter roads. Ernest prepared carefully, dressed in dark clothes, wearing a hunting mask covering his face, 2 pairs of gloves to wipe traces, and a shotgun hidden in the car. Scott parked the truck exactly 1 block from Jean's house, acting as lookout, his heart pounding in the freezing car. Ernest slipped into the house through the back door without a sound, while Jean's family was relaxing on Christmas Eve. Jean, Victoria, and Elizabeth were probably opening gifts or preparing dinner, not suspecting the intruder was their ex-husband and father. 3 shots rang out in quick succession. Jean hid in the living room, Victoria next to her daughter Madison in the bedroom, Elizabeth trying to flee but in vain. The horrific scene with blood pooling across the floor, furniture overturned, and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Madison, just 9 months old, lay crying next to her mother Victoria's body, without a single injury, like a miracle amid hell. Ernest returned to the car after 5 to 10 minutes, shaking and panicked, growling at Scott. Drive right now." On the way back, they stopped by the woods to dump the gun, trying to erase traces, but fear had already eaten away at both. On the morning of December 25th, police broke into the house. The Middletown sergeant discovered the bodies and called for emergency backup. Christmas Eve turned into a nightmare. Who would guess the killer was hiding hundreds of miles away? Part 4. Investigation. Evidence. Just hours after discovering the bodies, the Dauphin County investigation team swarmed the scene with full professional equipment. Autopsies confirmed the victims died from shotgun blasts at close range. Time of death around midnight on December 24th. No clear signs of forced entry, but the back door slightly ajar, suggesting the perpetrator was familiar with the house. June's co-workers confirmed she never missed work without reporting, speeding up the missing persons process. Scott Wholaver was quickly interrogated, initially denying but crumbling under pressure from circumstantial evidence. He detailed the trip, Ernest's threats, and the panicked behavior after the crime on the way back to St. Benedict. Ballistics matched the type of shotgun Ernest once owned before the ban, even though the gun was dumped. Shoe prints and black fabric fibers at the scene matched clothes Ernest often wore hunting. The gun ban from the sexual assault case became the key to motive. Ernest wanted to silence witnesses before trial. Police arrested Ernest just days later at his parents' home without resistance, but denying all charges. Scott plea-dealed guilty to burglary and third-degree murder in exchange for testifying against his brother. Overwhelming evidence, from testimony to physical traces, turned the case into a one-way track with no escape. Part 5. Revealing the truth. In the cold interrogation room, Scott Wholaver sat clutching a white handkerchief tightly, voice trembling as he recounted everything. He described how Ernest dominated his life from childhood, mentally abusing him so Scott never dared resist. The brother feels extreme remorse, lawyer Justin McShane said, like a sin of biblical proportions. Ernest had clearly stated his intent to kill Jean 2 months earlier, in rage over the divorce and loss of custody. The puppy pickup trip was just a cover, really to carry out the plan to silence Victoria and Elizabeth. Jean's co-worker witnesses described her fear of Ernest, frequently checking door locks before bed. Neighborhood residents remembered strange noises on Christmas Eve, but thought they were holiday fireworks. Ernest was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, burglary, and violating the protection order, facing the death penalty. Scott received 12.5 to 25 years in prison, testifying at the January 2003 preliminary hearing before District Justice David Judy. The truth slowly emerged. Not a stranger, but the ex-husband and father, consumed by hatred, destroyed everything. Can remorse save Scott from the shadow of complicity in his brother's crime? Part 6. Trial. Verdict. In August 2004, Dauphin County Court held Ernest Wholaver's trial under intense public scrutiny. Prosecutor Fran Chardo presented the clear motive: silencing witnesses in the upcoming sexual assault trial. "We have the strongest motive and compelling circumstantial evidence," Chardo declared confidently. Scott provided key testimony, detailing the fateful night, though his voice broke with emotion. Defense attorney Sparrow T. Lapas countered, "No direct physical evidence, just the absurd testimony of the brother." But the jury wasn't convinced, convicting Ernest of 3 first-degree murders after just hours of deliberation. The death sentence was handed down, Ernest confined to death row at Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution. Scott officially received 15-25 years, expressing deep remorse to the victim's family. Appeals dragged on until 2018, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court rejected them, upholding the death sentence. The case became a symbol of holiday homicide, reminding of domestic violence lurking behind peaceful appearances. Ernest still awaits execution to this day, while Madison grows up without her mother or grandmother. The Wholaver murders are not just a Christmas tragedy, but a warning about the consequences of unchecked domestic violence. A paper protection order wasn't enough to stop hatred reaching its deadly peak. Family shattered, community shocked, and justice hanging in limbo on death row. Can victims like Jean, Victoria, Elizabeth truly rest in peace while the killer still breathes? Remember, behind Christmas smiles could lurk deadly shadows. Speak up early to save lives. Thanks for watching the Case Files. Like and subscribe for more shocking real cases. Say no to violence. Protect your loved ones around you today.